All right. Hey, everyone. Welcome to the Amberdata podcast, where we explore the intersections of blockchain technology and finance. Today, I'm super excited to have LeViness on, who's the head of the Push Protocol DAO and community grants. Ian, welcome to the podcast. Thanks so much for joining.
Thanks, Pat. Super happy to be here. Big fan of everything that Amberdata does. And, we intersect in a lot of ways between Push and Amberdata with how much data we deal with and a lot of other related things.
Absolutely. So really quickly before we kick things off, so to level set, so Push Protocol is solving a communication issue across kind of the Web3 stack. Can you give like the TLDR of the problems you guys are solving for?
Yeah, actually, the simplest, most foundational TLDR is first of all, it all starts with how much fragmentation we've had historically in the space as we've developed. So we're interconnecting everything in a much simpler way. That's number one. And two, it's important to mention, which we'll dig further into, I'm sure, that push protocol came from the simple yet powerful inspiration of, this is how traditional social media started and all these household apps proliferated with the help of push notifications and that advent. So we got used to those, all of those apps, WhatsApp, Facebook, what have you,
Mhm.
because we were getting those regular notifications onto our computers and mobile devices as we continued to. And that made it as simple as possible to remember what was happening in those apps. So, in the same sense, push protocol makes it as simple as possible to remember what's happening, per se, all over the crypto world in one place. And that place is not necessarily the push app or some kind of push hub. We'll talk more about that, but it can be just your wallet. It can be just this DApp or exchange that you prefer using as well.
That's super interesting. And I think from a transparency perspective and from a data perspective, like we know these things are possible, but it's really challenging to get like a unique position on what's going on or stay up to date, short of being in 1,000 Discord channels or making sure you're following the right Twitter accounts or actively monitoring your wallets in real time and position. It's a lot of work. So I think that's a really cool problem that you guys are focusing on, and obviously a huge benefit for the user experience as this space matures. So, Ian, before we dive deep into Push and what you guys are building, can you just kind of give us like your journey into crypto? I love to hear like how people got into it, why you got excited, how you got involved in Push, but maybe can you give us the full journey into the space?
Yeah, I'd be happy to. I do this all the time. I think mine's actually quite unique. It starts all the way back in 2016. I was and still am a certified English as a second language teacher, like lifetime certification, I guess. I was living in the Czech Republic back then, and I walked in to a provincial library in pretty much a random small town with my girlfriend at the time. We were just looking for English books, in their very small English current book section. It was just like one section for everything in the English language that they had. And I just looked down, and the book that my eyes fell upon, so to speak, was Digital Gold by Nathaniel Popper, which many people, even if they're new to the space, are familiar with at this point. And if you're not, it's just one of the first books ever by a New York Times journalist about Bitcoin, where it came from, and why it matters. So my journey started there with just eating that book up in like 48 hours. And I guess in a typical sense, because a lot of people say this in crypto and it's true. Step two was the Bitcoin white paper, and step three was crypto Twitter, which at the time in 2016 slash early 2017, by the time I got there to Twitter, was very, very nascent. It may feel early now. We all like to say we're so early, and it's true in a lot of ways, but super early back then, to the point where Bitcoin people were like the Bitcoin fam and Litecoin people were the Litecoin fam. And Litecoin was the number two coin. Ethereum wasn't. And the Litecoin people actually took me in first. There were about 50 of them that were notable, and they taught me everything they could about crypto. And, I took off from there. I'll pause for a moment if you want to remark on anything there, because there's a lot more to my journey, but that's the beginning.
Yeah, I think the similar tale across everybody is when there's the one thing that kind of like sparks, it's a deep rabbit hole. You like instantly get sucked down. And I think that's a really interesting piece is like crypto's such a like a black hole for talent. Like as soon as somebody gets interested, it's like all consuming. It's like a very obsessive type of like, I need to figure out how I can apply this, how I can go deeper into these verticals, what problems I can use to solve these things. So Czech Republic, find out about Bitcoin, go into the white paper, and then you join the Litecoin. You start kind of getting deeper in the Litecoin community.
Yep, and I'll always be thankful to them. I'll shout out two people right now, Tech Lords and Johnny Litecoin were particularly helpful. I think they're both kind of still around. I wrote some of my first articles about Bitcoin and Ethereum with the support of people like that, basically on Medium, which is kind of still popular now, but was really, really early back then. And sometimes you could earn a few dollars here and there doing that. I still like reading Medium when I can. But from there, 2017, I'm still a teacher, still teaching on the side. I fall headfirst into ICO season. I see both the good and the bad, and what can be fixed is what I like to call the bad, because nothing's really bad in our space. I just like to see it as an opportunity to be fixed. So from the ICO season, I then fell into my first real gigs in the crypto industry. I say gigs because from 2018 to late 2019, I was just a freelance writer living on one article at a time across all sorts of different projects. But TLDR on all that, because that's a really good thing you mentioned and really important to double down on. Everyone has something that really made it click for them, some concept, some trend, some interaction, all sorts of things in between. For me, it was realizing the true power of not just decentralization in practice, but the endless portability that everything in this industry brings, that you can just be anywhere and do crypto in a few moments across all sorts of different countries. And, it's never been like that before, for example, with the traditional financial system, at least not without lots and lots of intermediaries. Sometimes we do need people in between, but not as many as have been in the past, in
Yeah.
my opinion.
Absolutely. And I think that's like a really good point. I think one of the things that's super interesting is not only like once you kind of get like bitten by the bug to get into the space, once like new like the deeper concepts of like not just decentralization, but like the composability of these applications, like everything's an open API, everything can be built on top of each other, everything can kind of be like the Lego pieces of crypto, and it allows for such a flexible and like unique ability to build robust products in such a way. And I think, obviously as we will go deeper into the push side, that's kind of a big piece of what you guys are doing, I would assume, is the composability of allowing anybody to hook into the protocol and share or push information that they think is relevant.
That's right. That's one of our guiding principles, not just in theory, but in practice. You said it very well. We're dedicated to making it as easy as possible for anyone to hook into the protocol, to the point where even now, with over 600 integrations total and counting, we're still willing and happy to help everybody from, a small TVL, for example, small total value lock, to high value lock type partner to plug in, meaning we'll expand our developer resources, have our developers sit with them step by step to make sure the first integration happens and it's successful. Like, for example, what Dan Romero did with Farcaster. I'm very passionate about that type of approach early on. As long as you can sustain it, he was just personally onboarding the first few hundred users through DMs. And there's something to be said for that in terms of growth hacking and just overall growth.
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay, so kind of transitioning into push. So can you kind of talk about there's a few different products that you guys are building. There's the kind of push notifications, there's push spaces, video, and I think there's like push messenger. Did I cover it? Can you kind of discuss the four products that you guys are offering and kind of the differences and nuances between them?
Yeah, so first of all, everything that's accurate basically, and everything goes back to the protocol, of course. So it all plugs into push protocol and the functionality, both of the middleware that can go to any chain, DApp, etc., as well as the functionality that we're building out for native push nodes, which means what you think it means, of course, that we'll have our own network eventually. And a
Mhm.
lot of work is being done on that this year. But where our priorities lie are, even in a more simpler sense, twofold. Exploring and expanding practically the usage of consumer apps built on the push rails. So the push app is the first example of that, but we've got a lot more coming through our grants program under the DAO. And two, our other focus is on expanding the features, as you mentioned, of that app. So audio, video, and all everything in between. But actually, it's threefold because then, as I've mentioned, at the same time, we're making everything more and more native with our own nodes for validating storage and delivery coming out this year, meaning that every aspect of sending anything that can be classified as a message with our set of rules that these apps are built upon can be handled natively instead of with middleware plugging into other areas and partners.
Very interesting. And so I think like a lot of the things that that people focus on from like a consumer standpoint or an onboarding perspective is like it's not easy. There's like a lot of if you're going to manage a position in DeFi or if you want to like create and get people onboarded, like there's a lot of manual intervention to make sure you're doing it appropriately. One of the things that I thought was super interesting as I was looking through some of your integration partners and like how you hook in is a lot of the DeFi integrations. So like looking at my Uniswap V3 position and where my liquidity is provided in a specific tick, you can tell like push will tell me when I'm in a valid range or not, short of having to go check out kind of my Uniswap V3 front end all the time to see like where's my liquidity. Like that's such an interesting and valuable use cases to know when things are occurring. And especially like on the even on like the loan side, if I have a loan on Aave or on Maker, like if I'm near a liquidation threshold, like being notified right away so I can either provide more collateral or close my loan out is such a huge value add to like one, the entire ecosystem from a risk perspective, because now you have like at least you get like informed at the right time that something, you know, could occur in your position. And then two, it's like the call to action is like you can either do nothing, get liquidated, or do something and either close your loan out or add more collateral and put things back in that perspective. I think that's been such a missing piece in operating on chain. So in terms of like your integration partners, where are you seeing most of like in the DeFi realm, most of the kind of focus or use cases around that? Is it mostly centralized around like loan health, or is it mostly centralized around, you know, your liquidity positions in specific pools? Or is it, I'm just curious where like the biggest problem you guys focused on solving.
It's quite widespread, but I'll start with that's a great point. The If you can centralize it in terms of where we started, what the biggest issue we started with in DeFi on solving is, uh, I would say that that's making it as easy as possible for traders to track what they want to track. So it's not just about, for example, partnering with a DEX and just integrating the type of notifications that DEX's foundation side team wants done. It's about what the traders want. So traders on DYDX tracking their margins and leverage levels as accurately as possible. That's a great call out there. Everything related to that versus LP positions and all the intricacies there on different DEXs and pools and everything related. We span the whole spectrum in terms of DeFi, and we're always open to as deep of a customization as the group, network, DApp, or otherwise we're talking to is interested in. That sounds like, whoa, is that even possible? But with the way we work on a technical level, all it takes is the wherewithal of both development teams involved to figure that out. So, you know, as committed as they are, the partner, and we're always committed to making it work exactly as the partner wants. We can make it as customized as possible. One other call out I'll put there is DeFi DAOs, and every DAO is a really interesting use case for us. So imagine like all the problems every DAO and decentralized community has with just voter turnout or people participating in all sorts of initiatives, participation related notifications, and just governance and voting. And inside of that governance sphere, related notifications can't be overstated just how interesting and high potential those areas are.
Yeah, that's actually a really interesting piece. So not only do you have as a user of a protocol from like a financial perspective of trading or borrowing, lending, um, not only do you have just like that component of it, but you also have like the growth and development of the protocol. Now, sometimes that the governance piece seems to get kind of overlooked by a lot of like regular users, but staying up to date is really challenging. And knowing when it's time, when there's a vote or what it, what the topic is generally like you can only sit in so many discords all day. Like you can only read the announcements channels and follow Twitter. But to just say, hey, you are eligible to vote in these things is such a good call out to say like, okay, whether you do or you don't, the notification of knowing that this falls within like a criteria that your wallet or address, a group of addresses kind of apply for is surely a better way to push adoption of governance.
And then related to that, something I'm passionate about and would like to see, I was just actually suggesting this to some of the Arbitrum DAO community members who are amazing. That what if we could reduce the complexity of work stream related communications through customized push notifications? So like the Arbitrum DAO Treasury Working Group gets their own notifications just for their subset of wallets, like you were mentioning, targeting these subsets on purpose. Or again, on the DeFi side, something I'm passionate about is that once we launch nodes and our finality gets even less and even better finality with push notifications, I'd like to see a lot more customization with perps and things that, whales and deep traders and power users are very passionate about knowing about in real time, so to speak.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I mean, I think like obviously as the ecosystem develops on chain, you guys are just a natural consumer of all the events and data that are being created. And so different ways to package that obviously allows you to adjust for maybe you're more DeFi active user versus somebody who's maybe more governance and protocol related versus somebody who's, maybe borrowing and lending certain assets on different protocols. Can you kind of talk about like the um, the onboarding process? Like, let's say I launch a protocol tomorrow, and I have a bunch of notifications for let's say it's a lending protocol. I want them to be notified if their threshold reaches a certain level of liquidation. How does that integration work? Like, what does that look like? Is it something that you mentioned earlier, like you can kind of like work with the protocol, but since you guys are a protocol, I imagine they can seamlessly plug in and write their own integrations, or maybe that's not correct. So could you kind of
No,
like,
that's basically right. In the simplest possible sense, again, you need to get with us for an initial meeting. We show you how to start a channel with through our site, through our app, basically there. You pay a really small cost for starting the channel. It's not to the team or some kind of rent like that. It's just a cost to keep the network running like a public good. So everyone pays it's really small. It's something like the last time I checked, $5 or less,
okay,
probably way less at this point, because we're always improving that. But you start the channel there. And from the point that you start the channel, then we meet with you on the development side to make sure that the notifications are as customized as you need them to be. For example, going back to governance, Shapeshift DAO does have customized governance notifications with us that are still running. Going to something we haven't discussed, CoinDesk has over 10,000 subscribers doing customized news notifications wallet to wallet with us.
interesting. And so that's actually an interesting piece because I think of push more from like I want to know what's going on chain about like my addresses and what they're up to. But so I can also plug into kind of more off-chain context around different events from like a CoinDesk or something like that.
That's right. We do both in that sense, and we continue to do both. Another exciting thing with that in terms of chain to chain composability with us, we're going to announce this week, the week in question of July 31st, actually tomorrow on August 1st. We're having a spaces with Wormhole to announce how we're using this functionality with our NTT framework to enable cross chain requests, which is actually not just cross chain, but instead of having a lot of development related work to, for example, make sure that we support a full chain, fully natively on a code based level, It's a lot easier now, and we'll just have kind of more of a plug and play solution for all chains with the help of Wormhole and what we're doing at the same time. So that's pretty exciting.
Interesting.
TCR and push is coming, and that leads us even closer to push and our vision of being not just, the middleware of choice for everything communication, but the just location, the hub of choice for all your communications in one place. Our greater vision is to actually make that happen. You just go into whatever app you like in our ecosystem, and it's on every chain basically at once, and you don't have to worry about that, all the bridging and everything.
Interesting. So that was going to be another question that I had. So in terms of like chain coverage, how does it, I guess, how does it work across like the growing L2 ecosystem?
Yeah, in that case, we have both the middleware based functionality. So that's when we have to more deeply meet with the development team to get different integrations going, or we have the native functionality, which just means we support the chain involved on such a deep level. It's just plugged into all of our code, and any app can just launch at any time with us because that chain is end to end supported. Those chains are more than 7 now. One of the latest was Arbitrum. Another one of the latest supported that's related to a higher layer of things is Cyber, which is trending in a lot of ways now. A lot more coming, including Solana. There should be some updates later in the year on that. That's not an L2, but it's
Yeah.
important to mention because of the growing popularity, especially on the consumer side.
Right. Absolutely. That's super interesting. So like once you have a holistic view of like events happening across the space, like the challenge that you're solving for is like your web 2 identity is basically linked to an email. And you're opting into getting these notifications from or your phone number or whatever, and you're opting in. Well, there's not really an opt-in way to be notified that your wallet is something is happening across everything that's going on in this space. And so once you have that kind of outline and that base, then it just comes, as new protocols, as new things develop, they hook in and now everybody's kind of getting alerted and getting updated on their positions, on the health of their loans, on, what's going on in like maybe on-chain gaming or social fi. And so your identity is actually just your wallet, not all these different email or phone number and different platforms that control access. And I think that's a really
Exactly.
interesting, like it's a single source of push instead of getting a WhatsApp message and a text and a FaceTime. Like you have like a single consolidated place where all these things come in across
You
your.
just said it. I
Health.
was gonna. You just said it. I was gonna say that, but you said it so well. That's how we talked about where we started from. The inspiration of why push notifications matter. But you just said as well the other part of where we're going with this, which is how we improve upon push notifications and remain dedicated to simplicity, which we believe and know in practice is what actually most users care about above all else. Simplicity across the board.
Yeah. And I think the space has moved so much, it's moved so far past the 2016, 2017 era where just managing a wallet was a nightmare. Or like I remember running the Mist browser wallet where it'd have to actually like sync to the chain every time you wanted to do something. And so a lot of those pieces kind of come together and mature over time to make this ecosystem and make like what you guys are building like actually something that we can deliver and make kind of your average user experience kind of the Web3 environment in a more normal context. That's really, really exciting. And I'm really excited to kind of see as the space matures, like how these different integration partners kind of solve different problems for their customers or their users, because at the end of the day, they're going to build these notifications and these pushes for
There's
that.
a lot coming. There's a lot coming this year, and we'll talk more about that. But a lot is going to be a whole lot clearer in terms of the development work we've been doing, and it's going to be even more exciting in terms of the customization that's available, like you said, for all existing and future partners. Also important to mention for listeners and people in the Amberdata ecosystem that are more Eastern world centered, like in the Asian markets. We natively support Polygon and Binance Chain as well.
Oh, very cool. And I think the expanding chain coverage is so important. I mean, I love the L2 adoption, but it feels like there's a little bit of fragmentation right now in terms of like usability, importing things over and making sure you know like a holistic view of what's going on. So I think that's obviously solving like a big problem as people are using multiple chains for different applications.
You're right. And in terms of our app, the push app is not static either because we've had community members and rightly so asking what's going to happen with the push app? How's that going to evolve when the nodes are coming and all these other things are evolving on a technical level? And I can actually say now that we're transitioning the push app to be even more simpler than ever before and just a whole better UX across the board and much deeper features, including native Farcaster frame support and all sorts of other exciting things. And above all else, like I said, simplicity first and dedication to like making it as easy as we've said, as easy as your wallet is your email, and it's that simple to log in and get started. So that'll be coming. There'll be more information as the year goes on, and I would know because I'm the head of grants and I'm supporting that pivot.
So that's actually a really good point. So kind of transitioning away from like the push product development suites and the problems you're solving, can you kind of talk about the DAO one, maybe like your experience operating in a DAO? Because I think a lot of people, you hear the term. I don't know if a lot of people understand what it actually means to operate in a DAO. And then from a grant perspective, can you kind of talk through like what is Push's primary focus in terms of grants? Like what's your grant strategy? And maybe that's not the right way to phrase it, but like
No, it is. You're right.
so maybe you can touch on both pieces, whichever one you feel is easiest to touch on first, is either the grants or just
we
operating a DAO in general.
we can do both. It's all related in different ways, and I love that question. Actually, it's really interesting, and my passion is above all else besides push DAOing, which is why I was hired in the first place. Um, what it means to DAO, let's start there. There's a lot of misconceptions, a lot of different, just general thoughts about this. But for me, what it means to DAO is just to get together in a new way, like we always have as humans, and create something of shared value. I'm saying it like that because it doesn't have to be a profit generating business. It can be a charity that everyone else cares about. It can just be like a revitalization of a local park. It can be all sorts of things. But the point is, you do it on chain, you do it with a powerful mission that's so powerful that it's just really easy for everyone to not just get involved, but stay involved because they need it to be a part of their lives, just like they need a certain charity or traditional brand to be a part of their lives because it matters to them that much. And with that powerful mission and this on chain presence together, it is very much like I agree with a lot of people about this that you have a shared wallet, a shared vision, and a shared way of getting there. Sounds kind of nebulous, and we can dig deeper into all sorts of areas of that, and I'd love to. But just for starters, now to add to that, think of it as the future of community. That's how I think of DAOs. That's how I simplify it. It's not just for blockchain or crypto related things. It's for anything to level up and become just as endlessly portable as Bitcoin started us off as, except in a community context, except in the context of coordinating all sorts of diverse individuals around a shared purpose or vision.
Yeah, I think that's like a really the way you said it was like shared capital, shared mission, and like shared implementation. But
No,
basically,
that's right.
we all basically agree like, hey, we think we're going to use this capital to do this, and then there's almost like depending on the implementation or what the DAO is actually focused on doing, there's also like kind of like a social trust behind it. Like if you're funding an individual to go carry out something, there is a trust that they're going to like take the funds, apply them to the mission, solve the problem that you all agreed on. And I think that's like a really interesting, as much as crypto remains like we want to be like a trust minimizing machine, there's still like a human component to a lot of these things.
There is. And I know people would disagree with me, but I'm very much in the camp with you of what you just said. It's always going to be at the most basic level a human to human interaction for starters, even in this space. And to me, that's actually a beautiful thing, as well as the beautiful thing about DAOs. To get more specific, what led me to push DAO and push protocol in a DAO context, I have always thought DAOs were the most powerful force behind our industry, besides changing the financial system, for example. I love the idea of changing how we coordinate and changing the world faster and more efficiently through this on-chain coordination. It sounds really lofty, but I really believe that is the case. One example of a stop along the way to push DAO that made me even more sure about that is I've done a lot of work with Ukraine DAO and its founding team, still friends with a lot of them, still help a lot of Ukrainians. Seeing that effort made me even more sure of the power of DAOs and how they're really the future of community.
Yeah. And I think one of the things like this has always been like a vision of this space. Like the original the DAO of ETH, which led to the hard fork of ETH and ETH Classic, was again as I mean maybe it was I think it was an investment DAO if I remember correctly. But either way, the idea is there's this like shared vision. We apply, a collective group decision making to this pool of capital and we allocate from there. But even as that extends further, like if you think about like ICOs, that was like more or less like a DAO fundraising mechanism. Like it open source the idea for anybody to be a venture capitalist and invest in like an idea or a project they believe in, whether it was like speculative or not. Like that whole era had a lot of like very bubbly, but
No,
it
but you're right. It's
occupied
powerful in that
access
way.
to
It's
investment in different stages of companies. And maybe it wasn't branded
exactly.
DAO, but it definitely opened up the doors for folks who wouldn't maybe qualify for a traditional accredited investor. And I think those are some of the interesting pieces that this space allows for it is it opens doors. There's a lot of opportunity and obviously like the space is going to continue to mature and there's no shortage of things that are going to come forward and innovate. So I think kind of understanding where we came from, how it's being applied moving forward and how it's going to continue to grow is so interesting. And that's so
To
cool.
me too. To me too. And it's so true. Not just that ICOs helped us to understand even further how DAOs could work. Even the DAO helped us to understand how DAOs could work. People like to talk about the negatives a lot, and of course with good reason, but it taught us a lot of good too. And before that, people don't mention this enough. Bitcoin was technically the first DAO because of how it started. So when Bitcoin started like that, that gave us the first example. Then Ethereum gave us the composability through smart contract-based management of DAOs on a technical level. Then we went to ICOs, and another touch point that's important to mention along the path to DAOs as they are now, to me, is DeFi summer back in 2020, 2021. Around that era, DeFi protocols like Compound and Aave launching in the way that they did and sustaining in that way have shown us a lot about what it means to DAO, especially us at Push too, because just like them, we're protocol DAO on the most fundamental level.
And actually that whole DeFi summer was the innovation of like governance tokens. Not only did the application exist, but like the token was used for furthering the development. And that's become such a core standard of protocol development now. And so seeing how that's matured has been really cool. So on the DAO grant side, maybe you can talk about like how you guys are funding, what is the DAO like one, what's the DAO focus in terms of what you guys are granting and what's that process look like when you have like a proposal come through?
So the focus is both wide and narrow at the same time in a good way. We've doubled down on areas that not just the foundation, but more importantly, the community believes are essential to the scaling of Push as a whole. That's where the rubber meets the road at the end of the day. We doubled down as the DAO relaunched this year on everything that the community wants to happen, and we continue to do so, both through the structure of the grants program. It's 3 to 4 reviewers, all of which are just from the community, except for me. I'm in there, plus everyone else is from just the community. And then in terms of what our priorities actually are, I'm excited because it's not just prioritizing consumer use cases related to the Push tech stack. It's also prioritizing diverse founders building things like that, including women in every sense of diversity. I've announced a lot more about that in Austin, and I'll continue to do so. But also, we're prioritizing unique integrations that we've been talking about this whole time together so far.
Yeah.
That in the way that if they compel the grants council and the community as a whole enough with how they're approaching said integration or integrations, they'll get approved and we'll make it happen because we believe it's a really valuable addition to Push as it is today. and to leading us more importantly to greater functionality, like we've also been discussing a lot, push to making deeper customizations that haven't been made before, such as super deep things for LPs, or like I said, if someone were to propose to me a way that would work on a technical level for using push notifications for perps, that would be interesting too in a DeFi sense.
Absolutely. It'll be really interesting to kind of see how the proposals and the approvals and what people are interested in kind of integrating with move forward. Just from a where can folks kind of like monitor, keep up with the proposal ecosystem for push on the DAO side? Is there a link you can plug? We'll plug more links at the end, but I'm just curious, since we're on that topic, there's a good place
Yeah,
to.
of course. First of all, everything is accessible through the push DAO Twitter. That concretely is push_DAO. And yes, I said Twitter. I'm just a fan of the name, even though it's technically X now. On top of that, to find the forum and just dive right into everything DAO, just like every DAO, basically now it's hosted on Discourse. It's a customized forum there. It's really easy to search as far as SEO. You just type push protocol forum and it's right there in the first results. So you get into the forum as well, or we're that personable. Just like I was talking about Dan Romero's approach to Farcaster, the council is totally open in the sense of you can just text me / DM me on Twitter or on Telegram, and in both cases, my handle is the same. It's expat crypto 3, expat crypto 3, and then I'll plug another member. He's very helpful on the grants council. 60keys.eth is one of my top compatriots in the DAO, and 60 keys is very open to anyone with any proposal, and you can just find him on Twitter or on Telegram. And on top of that, I'll just say for now, we're constantly plugging you into the right channels from there. So if you just DM us and you have a specific question, like how do I get to this work stream or how do I apply for a grant, we'll send you the link. In terms of applying for grants, everything's on Charmverse, also super easily reachable. You just type push DAO Charmverse, push DAO Charmverse, and you just log in with either your email or your wallet, and then you can start doing everything. And we're always helping along the way. That's another cool thing about our new grants program. Everything is, all of the updates are immediately emailed to the grants reviewers and the applicant involved. So that's, we love that functionality with Charmverse, that we're always updated automatically on everything. With how busy the crypto world is these days, simplification is great. And yeah, on top of all that, our community is just super open and everything push. So even the founders are talking to everyone all the time, and it's everyone's input that pushes us forward, and we continue to grow in that way. I know everyone says that with DAOs, but we continue to add everyone in and be as open as possible. Yes, like things like the treasury are more carefully managed, but it's still open to everyone's opinion.
Yeah, I think I mean, that's such a good way to kind of summarize the DAO ecosystem. If you're interested and passionate about adding value, like everybody's generally open to talking to you, helping you out, giving you resources, figuring out ways
It
to make.
sounds crazy to some people, but it's not. That's one beautiful thing about crypto that has kept me here and kept me going and passionate about it. Just how open and friendly everyone is, and just how dedicated they are to helping you find the right road. To anyone listening right now who in any way wants to find their place in crypto, find someone like a DAO member, like we've been talking about, whose background or something else that you really vibe with, and just DM them, just reach out to them. It really is that easy to get started.
100%. So shifting away from the DAO side really quick, just to kind of as we kind of close out, you mentioned a few things that are on the roadmap for push. I think you mentioned that there's you guys are launching your own network. Maybe you can talk about like what's in the future roadmap for push as a protocol and the direction you guys see it moving in the next year, 2 or 3.
So our network is moving to full linear sharding, which for the more technical of you who may be listening, you know that means a whole lot more scalability in terms of how quick the transaction can go through, and in terms of better security as the network scales, for starters. So that's happening with the launch of nodes. To get more specific on why the launch of nodes matter and when that might be happening, the general answer that I can say is definitely this year. The more specific answer I can say is everything on the live roadmap is accurate. Some people have had a hard time finding it, but it's just accessible through push docs. That's where the live push roadmap is. Constantly updated, well updated. And yeah, in terms of the greater vision and how that works out on a practical level, the goal is what I was saying a few minutes ago. So with the launch of our own network and nodes and everything related, we're really practically becoming the hub for not just all push notifications, but all communications actually. So the more, for example, secure we get as we scale, the more distributed we get with the nodes in terms of how the network is managed. The more decentralized we get, the list goes on, the better our transaction finality gets, the easier it will be to see that and do that in practice. And that relates to grants too. The more apps that we will have built on the push tech stack, the clearer it'll be that we're able to reach that vision of being the hub for all comms. So that's actually the other announcement related to what you just said I can make. It's from the middleware of choice for Web3 for comms to the hub for just all comms.
That's amazing. And I think obviously like as you move that direction, that includes growing the integration of different protocols, like all the things you guys have done successfully so far,
Yeah,
continue to expand outside of that. It's just how can we do this better, faster, across more chains?
exactly. And that also relates to scaling our development team, doubling down on all sorts of things there. I can announce that the DAO, of course, is natively running a larger BD team for the ecosystem with the Foundation BD team helping. And as well as the DAO is fully running. I didn't quite specify that earlier on. But for those of you who may have been wondering, yes, grants for the push ecosystem are fully DAOified, completely decentralized in terms of the decision making from the foundation. And that's a good thing. And that's something we're passionate about because the next announcement I can make, which is super important to a lot of people, including me, is that Push is on a plan towards progressive decentralization of basically everything over a multi-year timeline. And that's another reason I was hired by the founders to make sure that happens.
Very cool. And I think that's actually really interesting. It's the way you see kind of the full decentralized roadmap go. It needs some centralization to get things moving. And over time, that kind of the path to full decentralization becomes more and more real as like everything matures. So that's really exciting to see
Yeah.
kind of that path being taken. So before we wrap up, I have a couple more, well, one kind of like more personal question in the Web3 space, and then one is just where we can find all your stuff. So outside of Push and the DAO space, is there any other areas in crypto that you're most excited by? I mean, you mentioned like the Ukraine DAO, obviously, like there's a lot of social impact. What are some of the areas in the Web3 ecosystem that you're just kind of keeping your eye on or most interested in?
I'll mention two right now, one of which you already said, but I'll double down on it because I believe it's that important. Social impact and public goods, everything related. I'm pretty deeply involved in everything related to that. I've advised all sorts of DAOs and communities which are now popular in that space, and I'll continue to do so. I can also announce practically that PushDAO will double down on public goods related efforts starting at the end of this year and going a lot deeper next year. And that's going to be really exciting for me personally as well, just because of how much I care about public goods, starting with, of course, as we both know, where Ethereum comes from and how Ethereum has doubled down on that area. On top of all that, other areas I love, real world assets. Yes, it's a buzzword, but I'm actually a nerd on things like how we get full homes on chain. Shout out to Sanjay and the Roofstock team. If you don't know them and people who are more newer to the space and more in the traditional finance sector, you might want to check out Roofstock in the sense that they were able to so far get several homes actually on chain and have them sold in that way, which never really happened before. And I was part of that effort when I was working at a consultancy called Serotonin. That was a great experience, by the way. And on top of real world assets, it's hard for me to say because I just love so much about crypto. But on top of real world assets, I'm pretty big on collectibles. So I was big and continue to be big on NFTs. Yes, there's a lot of gimmicky things, but that's natural in a nascent space like this. There's a lot of great things happening in NFTs, and I believe even greater things will continue to happen. Addition and going a bit deeper there, I love music. I'm a musician. I think music NFTs will be a thing. Yes, Cooper, you're right about that. For those who don't know, Cooper Turley loves to say music NFTs are the future a lot, but he's right. I believe they will scale eventually, and we're just very early at this point. So it's nice to see what Cooper Turley is doing with his music NFT record company and things related to that. I have a lot of friends who are musicians and producers doing a lot of cool things in the music slash crypto space. So that's the last one. I mean, I'll mention for now, but the list goes on and on and on. I never felt like I fit into any traditional box, and crypto is the place that's like really been home for me in terms of my interests.
Yeah, it's tough. There's so much going on and so much attention, and it's also interesting. I totally agree with you. It's very your brain feels like it's fragmented into 1,000 pieces where you can only spend just like enough time learning about a little bit of a certain topic. So, but I agree with you. I think the RWA stuff, as much as it seems buzzwordy, like there are actual like physical assets being brought on chain, whether it's treasuries, real estate, collectibles. I know that there's like a big like luxury goods markets being brought and
Look at what MakerDAO is doing as well. People may not know, especially newer listeners, but MakerDAO is a great place to dig into how DAOs and DeFi things, DeFi protocols as well, are uh, proactively investing in and using real world assets on chain. They continue to be the paradigm for that, despite like all sorts of other things happening around protocol DAOs. I do believe MakerDAO does a lot well and continue to shine a light on the real world asset space in practice.
absolutely. Well, Ian, before we wrap up, last thing is where can folks follow you, push? Where can you want to plug all the socials? And we'll make sure to include links for
Sure.
everyone, but just so everyone.
Well, number one, this may not be typical, but it should be. I believe you and everyone else, I'd love to follow you. So DM me about everything that you're interested in. First of all, I'm that kind of guy. I want to get connected with everyone else and their interests and see what we can build together, builder at heart. Second, in terms of my links that aren't the ones that I've currently mentioned, my primary link is the expat crypto 3 Twitter. That's my personal handle. And on top of that, of course, my full-time efforts are on Push and Push DAO. So that's finding Push Protocol on Twitter. That's also finding Push_DAO on Twitter and everything we're doing there with the wonderful founders, Risha and Harsh and the greater team. It's just impressive coordination. And I believe people will continue to see that as the year goes on. Just because we believe in something, we do something that everyone can get behind, which is why can't we all work together? And you said it through how we do push notifications. We don't lock anyone out. We're not tribalistic in any way or anything like that. We're for everyone, and we should be for everyone. So above all, follow what you're interested in for any listeners in the push protocol or partner ecosystem, and let me know how I can help, I guess is what I wanted to say there.
Awesome. Well, Ian, thank you so much for joining. Really excited by what you guys are building. I think the problem you're solving in terms of like transparency and understanding and contextualizing what's going on is so valuable across whatever vertical you're interested, whether it's DeFi, NFTs, metaverse, just general kind of off-chain context. To get that directly to your, basically informed to your wallet, really gives you like a single source of your identity and like what's going on there. So thanks again for joining. Appreciate it. And we'll catch up soon.
Thanks, Pat. I hope so. It's been wonderful to be on. Can't wait for the next time, to be honest.
Talk to you soon.